Luma and the Pottery House of Quiet Clay. Luma followed a lantern-lit lane to a low building whose roof wore tiles the color of wet river stones, and when she stepped through the wide door she felt a hush shaped by water and earth, the kind of hush that appears when many simple actions are carried out with kindness and allowed to keep their own pace. And the room breathed with a calm heat from a kiln that glowed softly behind a screen of brick, while along the walls wooden racks held rows of bowls and cups and vases that were learning how to be themselves, some still damp and cool with the scent of rain, some dry and powder pale like sifted clouds, some already dressed in glaze that remembered the colors of wheat and tea and smoke and moss and the pale interior of shells, and a potter with sleeves rolled to the elbow welcomed her with a nod and a smile that traveled without sound, and showed her a basin where clear water rested and a shelf where sponges and wooden ribs lay like patient tools of a friendly craft. And Luma placed her paws upon a low bench and felt the cedar accept her, and the potter explained that the wheels here turned slowly with a soft trickle so the clay could discover its center without being persuaded too quickly, and a cat with a brindled coat and a bell as quiet as dew walked by with the serious air of a librarian, then leapt onto a counter, where a line of tiny cups cooled beside a bowl of brushes, and the potter invited Luma to watch as he set a ball of clay on the wheel head, his hands wet and steady, and as the treadle whispered the wheel began to turn not with speed but with a rhythm that matched the breathing of the room, and his palms rose and closed around the clay, so that she could see the pressure travel from fingers to wrists to shoulder and back again, a conversation of patience that looked like tide and looked like listening, and the clay swelled to a humble cylinder and then opened and then rose, the rim becoming a thin ring that caught the lamp light the way a ripple catches a lantern, and he spoke softly about centering, that first kindness, how the clay will wobble until a guide teaches it to remember itself, and how the body of the maker must also center with shoulders low and breath steady and thoughts unbuttoned, and Luma listened to the slip sing beneath his hands, a whisper like rain threading through reeds, and she felt her own breath combine with that song. And when the bowl had taken a shape that pleased the air, the potter pinched the rim with a gentle rhythm, and the circle answered by smoothing itself, and he lifted a wire beneath the base, and set the new bowl on a canvas-lined board, where it could rest and become sturdy, and he invited Luma to try the wheel and showed her how to wet her paws and how to hold the clay as if teaching a shy animal to trust stillness, and how to lean without forcing, and she centered the ball, feeling its small rebellion subside, and when her paws opened the form it responded with bright willingness, so that a small cup appeared like a sunrise in miniature, and the potter placed a damp sponge in her paw and encouraged her to breathe with each motion, inhale while lifting and exhale while shaping, and the cup learned the rhythm without complaint. And after trimming the base with a loop tool that drew ribbons like curled peels, she set the cup beside the bowl and watched them sit together as if they had already exchanged names. And on a wide table nearby slabs rested under cloth waiting to be cut into tiles or folded into boxes, while a young apprentice smoothed their surfaces with a metal scraper until the light moved across them without stumbling, and she passed Luma a small square to touch, and it cooled her pads pleasantly, and the apprentice spoke about memory living in lines and how every texture pressed into clay leaves a story. The net of a leaf or the grain of a plank or the linen of an apron, and how those stories wake again when the cup is held by someone who needs comfort, and in the glazing corner jars of powder lined a shelf like an alphabet of quiet weather, ash white and rice straw and shell cream and sea foam, and cloud blue and willow green and iron brown and tea smoke, and beneath the jars stood bowls where the powders had been coaxed with water into silky suspensions, and brushes waited in a rack, some thin as whiskers and some wide as leaves, and a pair of tongs hung ready to hold a piece without leaving a mark, and the potter demonstrated the dipping of a bowl, a slow descent into glaze, a pause, a slow lift, the liquid coat settling and clearing to an even skin that caught the breath for a small moment, and he spun the bowl gently to watch the coat gather on the foot like a small tide, and showed Luma the way a wax triangle on the base keeps a bowl from fusing to the kiln shelf, a simple boundary that makes future kindness possible, and at the trimming station another wheel hummed, while a leather-hard vase rested upside down and a carver shaped a foot that would teach the vase how to stand, and the carver breathed in rhythm to the small cuts, and the spiral of trimmed clay fell into a soft pile that looked like a nest for the cat if the cat preferred spirals, and along another wall a series of test tiles hung with neat labels, more iron or less ash or longer in the top of the kiln or gently reduced at the end, little rectangles that recorded the learning of the room without boasting, and a window near the kiln looked into a pocket garden where bamboo bowed to night air, and a low trough of water reflected the kiln's glow as if enjoying a private constellation, and the kiln tender, a quiet person whose hands remembered heat like an old friend, adjusted flues and peered at witness cones that bent at their own pace, a choreography of willingness, and every so often a cup clicked very gently, a sound like a seed acknowledging earth, and the tender smiled as if to greet that small voice, and in a side room shelves held forms made long ago by potters who had moved on, gifts and orphans of too many experiments, and the dust there lay lightly like a veil, and Luma found a bowl that had been mended with a golden seam, and she traced the bright line with a careful paw, and the seam felt honest, not a scar to hide but a path to admire, and she imagined it on a table where someone would tell a good story while pouring soup, and she returned to the main hall to watch the potter and apprentice set up for a cycle of slip painting, laying sheets that would bloom with watery strokes, every motion slow, the brush held not like a tool but like a reed hovering above a pool. And on a shelf a row of pitchers waited to receive handles, and the apprentice rolled coils and flattened them gently, then scored and slipped the join, pressing a soft curve that looked as natural as a vine finding a trellis, and Luma practiced a handle on a small mug and learned that strength and grace are not opposites, and that the line which supports can also please the eye, and when the mug rested in her paw it felt balanced and real, and the potter poured warm water into a shallow bowl and invited Luma to wash her paws and notice how the clay left its mark on the water while the water removed clay from her fur, an exchange that benefited both, and then they sat on stools and drank barley tea from cups made in the same room, the tea tasting somehow clearer, for having been poured into something taught by earth and fire and breath, and he asked if she would like to help load the kiln, and together they cleaned each foot with a sponge so no glaze would glue it to a shelf, and they placed pieces with respectful distance, leaving space for heat to travel and tell each piece the same kind news. And between shelves they left small doors for flame, because flame also enjoys pathways and polite invitations, and the posts rose like a patient checkerboard, and small wad dots beneath larger bowls kept feet from warping in the long warm conversation that lay ahead, and the loading became a puzzle that encouraged patience in the hands. And when the door bricks were set in place, the tender added a gentle layer of fiber, closed the peepholes not to conceal but to let the fire have privacy while it did its ancient work, and Luma walked the room slowly, feeling how each corner had a personality, the quiet of the mixing sink where water had learned how to receive and rest, the order of the tool wall where ribs and knives hung like notes in a scale, the small shrine of broken shards that were beautiful even without utility, and she read a chalkboard schedule, written in friendly script: wedging, throwing, trimming, break, glazing, tea, loading, the words like bells in low tones. And in an alcove she found nesting bowls that fit so well her paws wanted to stack and unstack them, just to feel the slow satisfaction of matching curves, and near the doorway a board of orders held simple sketches, a bowl for morning fruit, a mug for a teacher who liked tea to cool at a gentle pace, a platter for a family who gathered on Sundays, and beside each sketch a note about color: the blue that promises calm, the pale green that looks like walking under leaves, the quiet cream that allows bread to look noble. And Luma returned to her cup and traced a fingertip along the rim to check for evenness, and the rim answered with a smooth voice, no sharpness, only a shy invitation to drink. And the potter brought out a stamp with a tiny fox design and asked if she would like to press it gently on the base as a signature, and she did, and the clay received the sign the way a lake receives a pebble, not with splash but with rings that then settle, and time arranged itself like a row of cups on a plank, one beside another, uncomplicated and kind. And the night drew a mild cover over the windows, and the cat leapt down to check each bench as if tallying the work for a dream, and the apprentice swept with a straw broom that sang over the floor, and tiny crumbs of clay gathered into a hill that would return to the reclaim bucket and begin again, because work done with patience rarely wastes what it can love. And a bell announced the right moment to open the cooling kiln, and the tender cracked the door a finger width and waited, and then a little more, and then a hand width, and the room sighed as gentle warmth visited every object and made a brief home on the surfaces. And Luma peered inside and saw colors that had deepened into honesty, blue like water that has chosen rest, green like moss after rain, creamy white like light that knows how to keep company, and bowls ticked now and then as they adjusted, a conversation between glaze and body that sounded like approval, and when the door finally opened wide the tender lifted pieces with long tongs and placed them on a quilted board, and each piece showed faint kiss marks of the wads beneath, small moons that told of careful travel, and they found her cup now glowing softly, the stamp clear, the foot smooth, the glaze even, and she held it and felt gratitude rise as steadily as heat from the kiln. And the potter suggested a final practice, the listening shelf, where a new piece rests near a window for a few minutes while it meets the air as a finished self, and Luma placed the cup there and sat opposite it, allowing her breath to slow until the cup seemed to breathe also. And the cat leapt to the sill and watched with equal seriousness, then closed its eyes as if giving a blessing that required feline privacy, and from the pocket garden crickets measured the hour with even strokes, and a little wind moved the bamboo very slightly, and the shadows of the stalks lay across the racks like lines in a song. And the potter wrote a line in a notebook that rested by the listening shelf, a record of small completions, and the line for this entry read, "A fox learned the pace of clay and left a cup that will teach calm to water." And Luma held the cup once more and imagined it at her window tomorrow with steam rising and morning opening, and she understood that cups can carry patience like a flavor, and she thanked the room and the people and the cat and also the wheel and the kiln, because gratitude seemed to be the glaze that made all things shine more kindly. And the potter presented her with a small cloth wrap and showed her how to fold the cup with 2 turns and a tuck, and the cloth smelled faintly of rice and cedar as she understood that even packing can be an art of care. And before leaving she walked once around the racks to say good night to the bowls and plates, and each one seemed to answer by catching the lamplight in a way that suggested a smile, and outside the lane kept its calm promise, and the roof tiles held a trace of the warmth they had borrowed from the kiln, and the night gave back coolness in a measure that made all temperatures agree. And on her way home Luma paused on a bridge over quiet water and held the wrapped cup to her chest and practiced the breathing she had learned at the wheel. Inhale while lifting and exhale while shaping, and with each breath the canal below mirrored a slow circle that did not need to close quickly, and her room welcomed her with its own friendliness. A window set a little ajar and a pillow fluffed by a harmless wind, and she placed the cup on the sill and promised it a morning of light and warm tea, and she lay down and reviewed the motions of the evening, centering and lifting and trimming and dipping and setting and listening, and each motion became a lullaby, and the lullabies braided into one gentle rope that drew her toward sleep, and the kiln in her memory pulsed like a second heart, and the wheel turned in her thoughts with the steadiness of breath, and the cat patrolled the racks of her dreams with the dignity of a quiet guardian, and the city hushed its metal and glass, and the wind lowered its voice, and the roofs laid their shadows like blankets, and the roads gave up their last shine, and she imagined a field of clay beneath the ground that holds the city, a slow ocean of earth ready to be drawn upward and taught to become vessels for kindness, ready to enter fire and return carrying warmth to tables and sills. And in that image she felt how many hands across time had touched such fields and brought them to lips and palms, and her breath repeated the lesson until words grew unnecessary and sleep arrived as a glaze that fit perfectly, neither tense nor thin, settling over thoughts and sealing them with soft light. And through the night the pottery house of quiet clay continued to breathe, and the kiln clicked occasionally to say it would keep watch, and the racks of bowls and cups rested as if sharing a dream of gentle kitchens and slow mornings, and the wheel waited without impatience for the next friendly touch. and the cat curled into a coil that would fit perfectly inside a mixing bowl, and morning would come and tea would pour and cups would do what cups do best, they would hold and warm and offer. But for now the night widened into sleep, and Luma slipped into it with the calm of clay finding its center, with the ease of a cup finding the hand that understands it, with the peace of a kiln cooling after a long careful conversation with fire.